Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depend upon from where you are joining in. So, first of all, welcome to our today's session, which is predominantly focusing on archive with Dataverse long-term data retention for Dynamics 365 finance and operation apps. And our guest speaker today is Purvesh. So he's from Microsoft Fast Track team. He holds the senior solution architect position there, and he focus mainly on the long-term data retentions and how can we leverage the data. And he's going to talk us today the preview feature of the archival feature of Dynamics 365 app with Dataverse. In terms of his introduction, I will request Purvesh to go on more detail, but with my little knowledge and the chance that I got with Purvesh earlier, so he comes with a strong background of the technical aspect of X++ and the technical artifacts of Dynamic 365 financial operation app, as well as he has a good amount of knowledge on the solution aspect, architecting, and not only the app, but also the previous version of financial operation apps. So today he's more focused on the long-term data retention and how can we leverage data from financial operation app, predominantly on the GL aspect. Then we will also see some part of the demo. And then if you want to enable that preview features, what capability that you can enable, where to go, what needs to be logged in, and kind of a capacity that you need to enable. Towards the end, we have reserved 10 to 15 minutes where we will talk about more specific questions. I know many people reach out to me in the background and they ask a couple of questions, but for some reason and because of this time zone issue, they could not able to join today, but I have a bunch of questions received from my MVP friends where we will deep dive more on the pricing aspect, GDPR challenges, how the data will be reside in my residency concepts and all. Okay. So with that, I'll take a pause and hand over to Purvesh. Purvesh, once again, thank you for your time and efforts. I know it's how hard to join that too from Chicago and late in the evening. So once again, thanks for that.
No problem, sir. Hello, everyone. My name is Purvesh Vagasia. I'm a senior solution architect at Microsoft Fast Track. I'm a part of the USA SCM Fast Track team, and I'm the one who is leading the user experience, the customer experience perspective, and we do the close coordination with engineering team and the customers driving the data archive feature. The name of the feature is Archive with Dataverse Long-term Retention. That I can say that it was one of the most waiting feature from our customers and the partner. We will do the deep dive in terms of that the business challenge, the ask of that particular feature, that perspective. And yeah, as Rakesh has mentioned, we have a 15 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes for the question and answer session. So that way we'll make sure that you know that if you have any questions, we'll give that opportunity to ask and clarify your doubts about that feature. Let me share my deck. Yeah, Rakesh, please let me know you're able to see the screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Yeah, so this is about archive with Dataverse long-term retention feature in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation apps. This feature is currently in the public preview. That means that you can follow the steps and you may need to configure that your environment first to enable this feature. And once this feature is enabled, you will able to run the data archive and the long-term retention jobs for the various scenarios that we have enabled for our customers. On top of that, we'll discuss about in terms of that if you need to customize, if you need to, if you have the different scenarios that how you will able to build that scenario and the testing. So agenda perspective, we will start with the business challenge. Like what could be the business challenge? Why that we need that this feature? And then we'll discuss about the framework, that overall the archive data framework. Then we'll discuss about the different data archive scenarios which are available in the out of box the data archive the feature. Then I have a demo that will quickly take you through that how you can enable that the feature, and then how you can run that your data archive scenarios, and then in terms of that how you can keep track of the progress of that particular your archive jobs and the transparency perspective in terms of how many number of the records that I was able to archive. And we'll touch base on the handling the customization as well, because of we know in that the ERP there will the very few projects that we will have a no customization. So customization will be definitely, because of that is what that that the business would have a requirement to customize that our Dynamics 365 products. And if you have that the customization, how that you will be able to bring your customization into the data archive. So we will touch base that scenario as well, and then at the end we will have a question and answer. Let me jump into the next slide, that is about the business challenges. So that we have seen that over the period of time after that the customer go live on the finance and operation, they make the transaction on day-to-day basis. And we have seen over the period of time that particular the database, it has been grown more than 1 TB within 3 to 4 years. Or if it is a smaller customer, that will be that it will take the 5 years, right? And when that particular data is grown, that could lead into that the performance issues. There would be the another in terms of the data growth, the perspective that will cost to the customer more, and the performance is another challenge. So to cater that particular those challenge in terms of that we may need to think about. And definitely if that your database is been grown, the database maintenance also would be the another challenge, right? So considering all those challenges, that we will be required something in terms of to limit those the database growth. So to limit that the database growth, there are two possible options. Like normally that out we suggest that our customers to use cleanup. So as a part of the database data cleanup that the process, there are the out of box data cleanup, the routines are available, and we ask our customers to use those routines. And that way you can delete that some of the transactional records which are not, which have been like ones that which are not that important in terms of that after processing of certain the documentation. Example perspective, I can say your sales pump table, sales pump lines. So that will, these are very important from processing of your sales documents, right? In terms of your sales order confirmation, package slip posting, sales invoices. But once that particular the documents or the journals have been posted, that it will be required to clean up those data at some interval. So those cleanup routines will be helpful to clean up all such the data at some time. Another examples are like the batch job history. Batch jobs are executed, then you may need to clean up. On top of that, with the 1039, we brought the batch cleanup as well. So that was not available earlier because of like some of the customers who have a scenarios that who keep on creating the new batch jobs, even to support their integration scenarios and our other the business scenarios. So over the period of time that we have seen that the data in the batch job tables or the batch tables, the batch task that have been increased, right? So with the 1039, that the cleanup routine is available to clean up those as well. And the event CUD is another one, like if you have alerts and if you have not using those configured those the batch jobs, we have seen that the data is been grown into the event CUD. So there are some the features that is on the way that is going to that will help you guys to clean up those the routines as well, and as well as the sys database log. that after some time that you may need to clean up the sys database log. So that way, this will help to restrict that, to limit those number of the records in those tables. Wherever the cleanup is possible, that we suggest to use the cleanup. But there are some documents where the cleanups are not possible in terms of, I can say, your sales orders, right? It has been invoiced. Once it has been invoiced, these are the freeze records. You cannot delete, you can't do anything from the UI perspective. So to address such thing that, that we come up with the solution that is called the data archive with long-term retention that will enable us to archive the data from your transaction tables. On top of that, so that way it will help us to limit the data volume in my transactional tables. So when the data is been the deleted from the live tables, so automatically that you will notice that the performance has been improved, right? And when that particular the transactional tables are deleted, that the database size will be reduced. So that is the direct impact on that your database cost. On top of that, as a part of that, the long-term retention, that you will get the data into the long-term storage. That way, you will able to continue your the BI analytics requirement in case of the some of the data that you need it for from the forecasting perspective, so that you will have a data available into the cold the storage. That way, that your application database will remain the lightweighted, and you will have a data available for your day-to-day the business analytics need or some other needs as well. And the another benefit is the database maintenance will be easy, right? So let's talk about the data archive, the data flow in the data archive framework. So in the left side of the screen that you can see, that is my FNO database. Of course, there are the two major component in terms of the FNO live. When I say live, that means your live or your transactional table. Name of your transactional table could be your inventory transaction, your sales table, sales line, your retail sales table, retail sales line, your either general account entry or any particular the text transaction, and so many things. So these are the tables that we create that our transactional data on day-to-day basis, right? And we have a history data. So as a part of the data archive framework, it is mandatory to have a one-on-one in terms of if I have one live table, I should have a history table, and it should be symmetric to that your live table. In terms of the schema perspective, it should be identical. Of course, excepting one or two, there are the system columns related to the data archive. But otherwise, that remaining the data columns perspective, it should be, it should match one to one. If there is a particular any gap in between, in terms of that, if you have a custom field, system will not allow you to run the data archive. The scenario, it will give you the error message as a part of the validation in place. And that makes sense, of course, because Microsoft doesn't want that our customers to lose any data, even though if it is a customization. So you may need to create, if you have a custom fields, you may need to create those custom fields into the history table as well. And on the right side of the screen, that is the Microsoft Managed Data Lake. So it is a Microsoft Managed, as the name suggests, it is a Microsoft Managed Data Lake. That is the SaaS solution from the Microsoft. That means the security and everything, it is a responsibility of the Microsoft. How you can access this data if it is in the Microsoft Managed Data Lake? Answer to that is the Fabric. So you may need the Microsoft Fabric. Using Microsoft Fabric, you will able to query the data on Microsoft Managed Data Lake. That way you will be able to access the data, you can build the Power BI reports, and that way you can continue with your analytics. How that particular data flow from live table to the managed data lake? So that is through the Dataverse. So it use the CDS based virtual entities. So when we talk about the virtual entity, definitely I'm going to do the deep dive in that the architectural diagram. But when it is a data entity, so sorry, virtual entity, that means that you will have a one-to-one, the data entity also need to be created for your live table. So to support the data archive the process, each live table will have one history table and one the BI data entity. We call it as a BI entity. That way, the data will push from FNO to the Microsoft Managed Data Lake. It will use Azure Synapse Link or the Athena pipeline to push the data from FNO to the Managed Data Lake. And as you can see that, that particular flow is kind of a unidirectional. So that is a one way. However, if you have a look at on the left side of the process flow, when you run the data archive, it will delete the data from your live table. It will get copy into the history table. As a result, what will happen is that, let's say that you run that data archive job, it get completed today, and after few hours that the business came to you for the inquiry about some of the sales order, all the some of the GL transaction that has been archived. The user interface is available. So inquiry forms has been provided by Microsoft out of box. And using those forms, you will able to perform the inquiry within that FNO UI itself using the data archive workspace. So you don't need to go anywhere else, even that the data archival has been done, because it will copy the one copy of the data within the FNO database itself. It's a separate table, and another copy that will maintain into the managed data lake. And here that you will have noticed that live plus long-term retained data, right? Why is it so? Answer that you will get is about if you heard about the BPA, business performance analytics, it used the Microsoft managed data lake. It used the similar technology, and the concept of the perspective, it will be the same. Your data model will be the similar. So when you configure that your FNO environment for data archival, very first process will begin, that is the initial sync. That initial sync process, it is similar to that initial sync happen into that your bring your own lake if it is a customer managed data lake as well. So as a part of the initial sync, that the entire your live table will get copied over here. So that will at the same time that you will notice that all the 100% records that have been copied from the live to over here, and when that the data archival will run, that how that particular data archive scenario will run. You may need to provide that your criteria, the range, right? That range can be vary based on that the scenario, but it is technically, I can say it is my data contract. And I have specified that my query criteria to archive the data, right? So whatever the data fall in that particular my query criteria, those records will get marked in the FNO database. And there is a, when you will enable that the feature, whenever you enable that your table for the data archive, that one column will get added in the FNO table. The name of the table would be his data state code. So when you enable that property at the table level, that proper name of the property is allow retention. When you will enable that the property that, and when that database synchronization happen, that the new column will get added. That means that table is now configured for data archival. It is available for the data archival framework from the data to run the data archive job. And of course that you may need to write some classes and all the stuff to the define that the relation between the live and the history table, that we'll talk in the next slides. And that particular the marking has been done, and that marking will be considered as a archive data. And when that particular delete action happen, on that particular as a part of the execution of the archive job, those deletion will be suppressed by Athena pipeline or the Azure Synapse link, and that delete action will not get cascaded into the managed data lake. So that is the reason you will have a data remain in the managed data lake as a live plus archive. And when that particular data will get deleted from the live table, that data will get copied into the history table. So that way you will have a data within that FNO database itself, but it is in the separate the tables. So definitely someone will have a question, like if you are copying if you are just moving the data from one table to another table, how you can blame that, that we will help you guys to reduce the database size. Answer to that, the question is index. If you take the example of any big transactional tables like InventTrans, out of box, there will be 22 indexes, right? On top of that, some of the customer would have created the index as per their requirement. Additionally, some of that indexes will be created by DAMs. The DAMs is that our database tuning advisor. So the DAMs will keep an eye on that our the database, because of now it is a SaaS model, so we don't have any DBA, right? So the DAMs will perform that all the activities related to the DBA on the Microsoft Cloud, on your production database as well as on your sandbox database. So DAMs will take care of that, keep an eye onto the performance, and whenever that it notice that there's some query that the customer has executed on the database, and if that they found like there are some the missing index, that index need to be created to improve the execution of those queries, and those indexes will get created. So that way it reach to that up to many extent depends on the utilization of the tables. So on an average, that what we have seen, if it is 100 gigabytes of your InventTrans, that means that the 30%, 20 to 30% will be the data it has been occupied. So that we can say that the 200 to 300 the GB out of the 100 GB is data, and remaining 70 to 80 GB are index. So when you will delete the data from your live table and you will copy into the history table, Microsoft strictly recommend to have at least one or maximum two. The one index is enough. That way you will have a minimum number of the indexes over here, and when you will copy the data of that, the 100 GB will get reduced from your live table. But when the data will get copied into the history table, you will have, I have noticed around 500 million records that we have archived. The size of the index was around 20 to 30 megabyte. That's it. So that way, that when the data archive has been done, the data have been copied over here. So we can say that the 100 gigabytes, it has been reduced from over here. Only 200 the gigabyte, that only that the particular that the 20 gigabytes that have been added over here, the remaining 80 gigabytes, that has been the benefit to the customer. And when that particular data is being stored over here, on an average that we have seen that the 50% compression, how that particular compression has been applied, that as a Microsoft, that when the data is been copied into the managed data lake, the column compression has been applied, right? And the data is get stored into the different file format. So, and it is completely file-based data, right? So all that, considering all those particular the benefits that we have seen, compared to the data is being stored in the FNO table, there will be the 50% the compression on an average. And if it is a InventTrans or the some tables that where we have a like many columns, that probably that you will not have the data in terms of that index the dimension 1, the custom dimension 1 to 10, and the many other like that. If you don't have the data over there, the data gets stored in the different way in terms of the how the column level compression it has been applied. So over in such tables that you will see that the compression is almost 60 to 70%. But on an average that we claim like the customer will get the 50% the compression on the data side. On top of that, so over the period of time, the data will get increased in your history table as well. So Microsoft is working on the roadmap item that will allow you to purge the data in your history table. That means that the data will get deleted from history as well. So then only the source, the data will remain within the managed data lake. And out of box, the functionality is available that we call it as a restore. As a result of that, the restore at any point of time that if you come to know or the business come to you and ask about like, okay, we have done the data archival for that particular that period and I want that data back into the live table. The restore functionality is available right now in the public preview and performing that the restore that you will able to restore the data back into the live table. When you move the data into the history and the restore back to the live table, the rec ID will remain in as it is state. There will not change in anything. That means that all the referential integrity that if you have based on the rec ID, it will remain as it is. And at some point, like if you want to delete the data from your managed data lake, some APIs are available. So after 10 or the 15 years down the line, if you don't need the data, there are the APIs available. Using those APIs, you will be able to even delete the data from your managed data lake too. So that was the overall the flow of the data from FNO database to managed data lake. Even within that, how the flow will work in terms of the live table to history and history to live. Keep in mind that when the new functionality that will be introduced about the purge, that means the data is gone from your history table and then you will not have any other option remain left over to restore it back. So till that time you perform the purge, you will always have an option to restore the data back into the live table. Let me move next. This is the visual representation of what I said earlier. So I will be quick to explain that particular one. Yep.
Yeah, I was having a doubt. If you can just go back to the earlier slide, please.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so my question is that, we, if I'm not wrong, in the, in Azure, there is a, the functionality of the SQL database mirroring, right? So I think, what is actually, the value add through this, the offering on top of the SQL database mirroring, because in the first part of the FNO database, what we see the FNO history table, that I think it can be achieved through the the mirroring solution as well. So is it something in the backend using that functionality, or there I'm
No,
getting
no,
that
no.
question?
So mirroring is kind of the replica, kind of primary and the read-only database perspective, you mean to say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is the by default. Even that is available at this moment as well. That we call it as a primary database and that your read-only database. If you talk about that how the export to data lake, the feature that is going to deprecate work, it use the read-only database. So it directly work onto so that your primary database will not get affected even that when you run that, right? So that is different. The reason behind over here is these tables are available on your UI as well. These tables are available to the users in the read-only form, and that way you can you can just if you need to search some of the sales order or that the GL transaction that have been posted in the archive, you can perform the inquiry from UI itself. So that mirroring or that kind of that the replica in terms of that the read-only database and the primary database, that is different than this archive.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
even that if you will delete the data from your primary, that your read-only data, that your mirror database, it will get reflected immediately. because that mirroring happen the near real time immediately.
Understood. So this model will be depending on running the the retention policies, right? This
Yes,
only
you will
will,
need to run
yeah.
those data archive scenarios. Yes.
Okay. And
And
second question is that this uh the the FNO database, this history table, is it something comes by default within this customer retention policies offering, or can client take the only the Dataverse managed data lake offering as well without taking the FNO history table? Because ultimately it is basically storing the same data, right, in the Dataverse, or it is within the FNO database. So can customer choose that option to skip maintaining the FNO history table, only it is maintaining the Dataverse?
no, at this
Okay.
particular moment, it will get copied over here. But when you will get the purge functionality, if you don't want, after execution of the data archive, you can purge immediately,
Okay.
right? But as a part of generic solution, because it's all depends on the customer to customer, right? In terms of that, even for some of the customers or some of the region where that in from the legal obligations perspective, like it is necessary to even answer to the audit questions. That system, that data
Understood.
should,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, it
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
remain within.
It
It
makes
should
sense.
not be the out of that the application as well, right?
Yes. Yes.
But
Yes.
that
Yes. Now,
doesn't
now I
mean,
got it.
yeah, so that doesn't mean that I cannot delete the data from my live table because I'm suffering from the performance issues.
Understood. So this model would help to get the the access of the past data as well from the UI if required, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Okay.
can build your own custom scenarios as well, even that if you have a custom the tables. Even you can build that your archive scenario even for the live the out of box table if Microsoft has not built the data archive scenario for you guys, because the framework is ready right now, so that you just can leverage that the framework and you can enable that your own scenario as well. So I have that one slide for the customization as well.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Purvesh.
No problem. So this is the kind of that the similar to that what I talk, but I will just take that example with taking that the the numbers. So because the it will or pictorial representation will always help to understand more than that we try to just speak. So initially, let's say that I have 1,000 the records in my live table. And since it is the initial stage, I don't have any data in the history table. And the initial sync has been performed as soon as that I have configured that my data archive scenarios, sorry, in my environment for data archival. And I have 1,000 already been copied into the managed data lake. When I will run the data archive job for the 400 records, that means that 400 records will get subtract deleted from your live. So the live table contain now the 600 after running the execution of my first data archive job. History table will have a 400 records because of the 400 records are being copied over here. And into the MDL, it will be the 1,000 records, but you can easily differentiate the live and the archive data using the column name that I have mentioned in that early slide, that is called the sys data state code. Using that, yeah, in the name of that particular the column in the managed data lake, it will be MSFT data state code. And if the value is 0, that means the live table, live data. If value is 1, that means it is the archive data. So that particular that marking has been done onto the live table when as a result of the query criteria that was that a selection has been happened, and that record those were marked with the sysdata state code 1 was picked up by the archive job to delete it from the live table and moved into the history. And when I will purge those 400 records, so I will not longer remain that the 400 record in the history table, but still I will have a 1,000 records remain in the managed data lake or my cold data or whatever the name that we can give. So that way, that is the truly long-term retention data in managed data lake. And this data will be used by the BPA on using the bring your own fabric. You can build your own Power BI reports. This is the high level architecture that how this particular data flow using what the technology. So as an end user, you will have access within that application. You will have an archive workspace. In using the archive workspace, you can schedule a new job. You can perform the inquiry on the archive data, on the archive tables. The data, the form, read-only forms are available, right? So you can perform the inquiry using that application archive workspace itself. When you install the data archive service in Power Platform Admin Center, automatically that archive service will get installed in LCS. It is nothing but the add-in, and it is a microservice based architecture that use the process automation. So that particular archive service will reside outside the FNO and even outside that the Dataverse, because it will be deployed in and you can see it in the LCS. So it has been deployed outside. And your controller will reside into the Dataverse. So when as an end user, you will schedule a new job, it will make that API call, and it will result into the scheduling multiple services in Dataverse. And Dataverse will be the responsible, the controlling the execution of the different services at different stage of the execution of the data archive jobs. So it is from as a end user perspective, it is just a simple solution, but behind the scene, there are many services that have been called at the different stage. Like when we schedule that particular the data archive job, very first the service that will call is the marking. So that marking will run through the archive service, and it will execute that the classes that we have defined, the data contract, the classes that where we have defined the my range in terms of the query criteria, and using those the query criteria, all the live records will be marked, right? And then once that marking is completed, side by side, the data sync up will be in the live tables, and your managed data lake will be in a sync, updating all the update operation on the live tables into the managed data lake using CDS virtual entity adapter service. So that is the reason, like the BI entity is also equally important. You should have all the fields over there, and then you may need to perform the refresh of that entity if you make any particular column change in the data entity. So you may need to refresh that entity into the Dataverse. So that way that any change in the schema change, metadata change will get reflected into the managed data lake. And that way, using the Athena pipeline, Azure Synapse Link, those particular data will keep on pushing into the managed data lake. And using Microsoft the Fabric, you will able to perform the inquiry on the managed data lake, and you can build that your Power BI reports. Here are the simple steps in terms of that the live to data lake and live to history. It is a one-to-one mapping. The data will go one-to-one, and when the particular restore has been performed, it will be the similar go back to the history to live table, the second step, and the purge that will delete the data from the history table. Yeah, let me move next. So how you can enable that particular archival the data feature. The setup, the link that has been available, I will, before we'll end this today's meeting, I will post that particular links into that our meeting chat, as well as that we have a Yammer the group. We encourage our customers and the partners to join that the Yammer group, so that we do have a weekly every Tuesday in to support the EPEC in the India time zone, as well as in the US and USA and the EPEC time zone. We have the office hours that has been scheduled on every Tuesday. So if you are interested, we would like to welcome into the office hours for the data archive feature. So we may need to enable the preview of the archive with Dataverse long-term retention. And once that particular this feature is been enabled, we will able to see the archive works, the archive workspace is visible to the users. Archive scenarios. We are in the public preview. As a part of the public preview, we have general ledger, sales order, inventory transaction, inventory journal, and the tax trans. These scenarios are available out of box. We are working on the retail transaction. That will be the private preview for selected customers with 10 of 40 release. And then after execution of successful execution of few scenarios, we will declare the public preview of retail. But these 5 scenarios are available. When I talk about that the scenario, that doesn't mean the one table behind the scene. General ledger. This data archive scenario consists of 10 tables, and the list of the tables are also available on our documentation link that you can use those particular reference. So GL scenario consists of 10 tables, sales order consists of 13 tables, inventory transaction only 1 table, inventory journal 4 to 5 tables, tax transactions 13 tables, all 5 tables made around 38 to 42 tables, right? And the retail will come up with more than 40 tables. So when we talk about that one archive scenario, it doesn't talk about the 1 or 2 tables. It made of the list of many tables. And when the data archival will run, it will go by the parent to child relation in terms of the hierarchy, and it will delete all the data from the parent table as well as the subsequent in the children tables. Prerequisites to execute those data archive scenario. If you have a GL or the text transactions, it need to be mandatory criteria is that your year-end closure should have been done. Once that year-end closure has been done, it means that your financial that the particular period is closed. That means there is nothing is left over from the financial perspective or from change perspective, right? So that is the primary criteria. The secondary, another criteria is you may need to run in the chronological order. It means that 2015, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. You cannot skip that particular the order because these two are the kind of related to the financial scenarios. So it is very important to run them in the chronological order. Inventory transaction, inventory journal. Definitely the fiscal year, that calendar year that need to be closed. On top of that, your inventory closing also need to be completed. So that is another criteria. Of course, because of that, once that we have inventory closing has been done, so that has made that posted the financial transactions over there, right? And another scenario is another criteria is that there should not be any inventory recalculation job in executing state when you run the inventory archive scenario. Sales order is very lean in compared to the other 4 scenarios because it will take the from date and the to date as the input criteria, and it will pick up all the sales order based on the creation date time. But the only condition is that order need to be invoiced. So all the invoiced sales order fall in that particular criteria that will be picked up based on the creation date time for the archival, and you will be able to run the your data archive. Let's have a quick demo. So very first step as a part of that, to use this data archive feature, you may need to go to the feature management and you may need to enable this feature. So that feature that will be available either into the new feature list. You just need to search that out of that all the features are the new features has been available. You just need to search by archive with Dataverse long-term retention and you need to enable it. Once you enable, then you can go to the home page and this will be shown. But here just you may need to just one thing that you may need to keep in mind that it is only the public preview. That means this feature is not available for the on the production environment. And when that particular you will enable this feature, you will see the archive workspace is visible. same workspace will be visible into the under system administration workspace list as well. When you will click on this workspace, it will land you to the archive with Dataverse long-term retention workspace. And on the left side, you can see all the scenarios which are available for the testing the data archive scenarios that include GL, general ledger, inventory journal, inventory transaction, sales order, and text trans. We are going to use the general ledger scenarios for today's example. When it will be landed, you may see that the screen is blank. So you need to hit the refresh button and it will take few seconds to populate the data and change the status within the grid. As I mentioned that it need to be done in the chronological order. So let me just pick up that USSI, the 2016, it is ready state. That means if you go up to the 2015 for that, the job is completed. Then only I will able to run the 2016. And if you have a look at the 2017 for the USSI company, you can see it is not ready. Why? Because the 2016 archival is pending. So that is the purpose of the chronological order, like that, you have to execute in that particular order so that you will be able to run the data archive scenarios. Now, if you have to run any new data archive scenarios, where that is in the ready state, you will be able to run. So you can run it through clicking the blue button that is called the new archive retention job, or there is in the action pane, there is an option is available. Here it will give you that option to choose like what scenario that you want to run. I'm going to select general ledger, clicking the archive button. It will take me through the wizard. In this wizard, very first step is like just give the name of the job. This is just a reference purpose for your internal reference in terms of to give the name and the click next. This is the criteria. Here that you may need to provide the criteria. GL perspective, you may need to pick entire year and for that legal entity. So I have selected USSI 2016, click next. Here it is the scheduling. I have two options, run single run or daily run at the allocated time only. If I click that the daily allocated run on time, I may need it give me the option that start and the time. Like I want to run only in the off business hours. So that flexibility I have. But in interest of time, I want to run immediately. So I want to run in a single shot. So I can give the start date and the start time. And then click next. When I click next, it will take me through the review. This is the screen that it is like you just review before you submit the job. So here that whatever the parameter that you give, you get a chance to review. If you want to make a change, you can click the go back and you can just make the change. By hitting the finish, it is going to create a new job. But before that create a new job, it is going to perform all the validation, which will take few seconds. If there any particular error, like any columns are missing or anything, it will stop you. But once that the job, if there is no error, it will create a new job and you can say it is in the schedule state. And here using that in activity logs that you can see what is the current status of the job when it has been created and all the other activities. I do have another example to share with you guys in terms of the inventory transaction where I have executed the data archival for 20 million records. And when I want to see that how this particular is been executed, here on the screen that I will be able to click the view detail log and it will take me through the detailed activity that has been performed during the execution of the data archive job starting from the beginning. So if you just have a look at this is the time when it was being scheduled, then it was being picked up and then the marking began. So it is the marking that would have been started with the bucket of the some numbers, start with the 5,000 of the buckets. And you can see that all that the marking of the 20 million records that marking got completed in it took some time. Once that the marking got completed, it was the reconciliation process. Reconciliation will make sure that the source and the target system will have a same data. There is no data loss. If it is any error, it will give the error. And once that the reconciliation is completed, the last step is the move to history. And that way that the data get copied from the live table to the history table and that's it. from execution of that data archive scenario. Here, system will just wanted to just keep in mind that these data archive scenarios are scheduled in a way that only one job will run at a time across the scenario. So system will not stop you to schedule any number of jobs when the other jobs are in executing state, but it will go and it will queue up and it will be in the waiting queue. So one job across the scenario will be executed at any point of time. So that is the reason, like, you just need to be patient when that particular data archive jobs will run. Data archival is not a full-time job in terms of that, the project execution perspective. It will run in the background at its own pace. Some of the services are scheduled to run once in a day, like reconciliation process, move to history. These are the services being run triggered from the Dataverse in the background, and but it has been scheduled to run once in a day. So even that, if you are going to archive only one record from your table, you can consider minimum 1 or 2 days to complete that entire the data archive. Depends on the data volume, it is going to take some time. These 20 million records that it got completed, it took around 3 or 4 days. So that we can determine that that how much time is going to take, and of course, like, what environment you use for the data archive, that is also important. Very interesting from the customization perspective, because of, like, each and every customer will have a customization, right? So I will be quick because of we are almost about to complete our 1 hour, but not a problem. Like, we can extend it for few more time, few more the minutes, and that way we'll take a time to complete that our that the presentation as well as question and answer. So extension perspective, if you have any customization, it will fall into these 3 scenarios. Like, one is the custom fields, second is your custom table within the existing data archive scenario, and third is, yeah, I want to build my own custom scenario. So definitely the question would be, how can I identify all custom fields? So FastTrack has created a SQL script which is going to help you guys, and that script is available on the GitHub, and you can get the link of that the GitHub from our documentation link. So you can just download that the SQL script, and using that you may need to run it on your sandbox, and it will give you the list of segregated list in terms of this scenario belong to this particular table, and these are the custom fields, and these are the custom fields you may need to create into the corresponding history table and corresponding BI entity. Once you once you make those particular all the changes that include the custom field, means that your fields that you have created in the table, as well as that come some properties that you enable in terms of the creation date time, modified date time. This is also considered as a custom field because of you have enabled it on the standard table if they have not been given out of box, right? So you may need to replicate the same changes onto that your history table, and then you may need to create onto the BI entity as well, and then you may need to deploy. So then that way those fields will be available for the data archival. Another scenario is the extension table. So let's say that I have a business requirement, and based on that the requirement, I have created a table which is going to store my some sales transaction along with the sales order, right? So if and along with that archival of my sales order, I want to include that my custom table as well. It is very easy. Documentation is also available. The code snippet is also been given with example. So you can leverage that particular and you take it as a reference, and you can create your own the class. And just you in this class, you just need to define a relation between the parent and the child table, and you need to give the reference of the history table in the BI entity, and that's it. that you can easily plug in your table, but of course you may need to create a history table and the BI entity corresponding for that particular table. Building the new archive type, engineering team is still working on the documentation. It will be published soon. Once it will be available, that you will be able to build that your own archive scenario as well. But now it no longer that, in terms of that the wait time would not be that much longer, and the framework is also available, so you will be able to build that your own archives. Roadmap perspective, we started this the feature in 10.38, the private preview, but now we are in the public preview of GL sales order inventory transaction in tax transaction inventory journal, and retail will be available in the private preview for selected customers in 10.40. General availability is engineering team is still working on the finalizing the dates. Yeah, these are the reference link that I'm going to paste into that so that you can use it in terms of overview of data archive, the steps that need to be followed. So these are the step-by-steps that the guided approach that you just need to follow those steps and you can enable your environment to test data archive. Yeah, and how to deal with that customization, there is a documentation link as well. So that's it all about the data archive. Yep, so if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and we can discuss about that, the question that if you have that I can help you to clarify.
Thank you, Purvesh. Folks, anyone has any questions? I have already enabled the mic for everyone, so you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay, so Purvesh, I have a couple of questions. That I have received from my MVP colleagues and few questions that I do have in mind. So I'll take that opportunity to ask a question. So one of the questions that I have received from one of my MVP colleagues that impact on local government regulations. And as an example, say for example, if you need to keep a local data for finance for 7 years in UK and 6 years if you are in Europe company, right? So how this long-term data retention feature would help in this kind of a context?
So the residency, you mean to say data residency perspective, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So the data residency perspective, like it is going to use that where that your particular that your Dataverse reside, the similar way that that your managed data lake is going to reside. So the data residency will be determined based on that where that you have deployed your FNO environment and your Dataverse environment.
Okay.
Yeah, and the data retention perspective, like that, that customer can decide whether they want to retain the data within that in the history table, or you want to use that retain the data into into the data lake. So it depends on like that, I'm working with some of the customers, like they have given straightforward requirements that it is okay, like the one of the Switzerland based customer, like they said it is okay just to comply to that my audit. I need like my auditor need the data irrespective of where it is, like in terms of the FNO or it is in the data lake. So they said we are okay with the data lake and we want to purge the data from the FNO because they have a large volume. Their inventrance is around 3 terabyte, only one table.
Understood. There's one more question, maybe understanding gap. Can offline or archive data be activated again if required by law?
Offline, you mean to say the history data, right?
History data.
So yeah, so if it is a history, then if you just refer to that the data flow or the archive flow, the diagram that I have explained, there was the restore functionality is available, right?
Yeah.
So using the restore that as a end user can restore the data any point of time until they have purged the data. Once you purge, then you don't have any other option to restore it back because the data has been gone from your history tables. So until and unless that you have data in the history table, you always have an option to restore it back.
Mm, mm. Understood. Understood. And my next question is around the licensing model. How this licensing model works in terms of we talked about. You just give an example of 20 million data that you could able to save with a specific time given frame, right? So in that context, if I'm having a conversation with my customer, finally it is boiled down to the cost, right? So what is the suggestion and the recommendation from Microsoft team in terms of the cost effective solution?
That is a great question. First of all, I would say the reason behind is that this archive feature is just a feature that has been developed by Microsoft. So there is no cost for the data archive feature. Of course, the cost is there for the data for the data that you are going to the archive data that you are going to store into the managed data lake. So Microsoft will charge for the storage of your archive data in managed data lake, and
Okay.
that will be considered as a your Dataverse capacity cost. So
Okay.
from the transparency perspective, like if you go to the um, Power Platform Admin Center, resources and the capacity reports under the resources, that capacity reports are available and you can keep a track on. So all the archive tables, you can easily identify these archive tables end with retained. That means these are all the that my capacity that is being charged to the customer from the archival perspective.
Okay, so if I understood correctly, whatever the technical artifact that we have learned today, including the
Mhm.
managed data lake service by Microsoft, so there is no cost associated with that. The only
No
cost
cost,
would
yes,
be
yeah,
the only
storage.
cost would be the how much amount of data that my customer is archiving, irrespective of whether it's a custom table or a custom field, or for that matter, a standard table. Is that right understanding?
Yes, it is. Yeah, the cost will be for, and even that if you go to the capacity report, it is a retained. It means that you are paying for the retained data cost. And
Okay.
there is a and if you want to perform the inquiry on the managed data lake, you need a
Mhm.
fabric capacity. So the fabric capacity is not free, right? So just you
Okay.
need a fabric capacity, and and nowadays that the customers use the fabric capacity for the different purpose, right? So
Mm.
it has been extended for the managed data lake as well. The using fabric capacity, you can perform the inquiry on your managed data lake, and you can build your
Mm.
Power BI reports and analytics needs.
Mm. But then in order to achieve that, to see that
Mm-hmm.
archive data in the FNO, as you mentioned, the fabric capacity to be enabled, but obvious my customer needs to buy the a lot of subscriptions of fabric. So is there any segregation that because if I look at the fabric, it comes with a bunch of
That
component, right?
yeah.
May
So
not
that's
be
the
all
another.
customers probably would require. So any specific thing that customer needs to buy, if at all, if you want to just stick to this the inquiry concepts.
Yeah, so at this particular moment, only the way is that the fabric capacity, there are the some other people from the C background and who
Mm-hmm.
are familiar with the data archive in the C, they
Mm-hmm.
know they can query to the archive data, and they can show it on using Power Apps. They can build the Power Apps, and you can show this particular the archive data using the Power Apps. But
Okay.
there are really limitations. There are multiple limitations in terms of you can only query 100 queries execute in a day.
Okay.
There is no join, nothing else. Like it is a one-to-one table queries that need to. So that is
Understood.
the reason. So that like it doesn't make any kind of the BI story. So like if you
Mm,
need the
mm.
kind of the BI story, then you need a fabric. Another thing is
Okay.
like, okay, I want to retain the data and I'm happy with that, my history data. That is another thing. Like you have a data on the FNO UI itself, but be aware. not you do not use the history tables for your building your reports. Why?
Hmm.
If you will build the reports on your history data, immediately DAMs will identify as a missing indexes because of we have only one index on the history table, right? So if you are going to build your analytics or the reports on the history tables, that means
Yeah.
it will automatically generate the demands for creation of the index, and DAMs will immediately capture like these are all the queries are executing very slow. So index will get start created over there.
Okay.
So
Understood.
yeah, so that you need to use that history data wisely only for the minimum inquiry.
Understood. Understood. I'll take a pause. I have a couple of more questions, but I would allow Sanju to ask a question. Sanju, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Uh, Purvesh, in that case, as a follow up to what you just explained, see, for us, there is a requirement to query archive data. Publicly traded companies require going back into history. Sukrut is aware. Um, so, if we are archiving for the purpose of extremely limited set of inquiries, that poses a challenge. Uh, how do we overcome that challenge? That's number one. And a far more simpler question is when is this going to be available for general use? Right now, it's not. Sort of two questions.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your first question. Like,
So,
what is
okay,
the your use case that you are
so
looking for?
archive, right? So,
Mm.
I think archival is good in
Mm-hmm,
terms of how Microsoft is coming down on uh, storage costs. But
mm-hmm,
if I archive and I need to access that data for audit purposes, every quarter and at the end of every year, there's a whole bunch of reports that we need to run. Granted that it's not on a daily basis, but there's a lot of data that needs to be pulled.
but
So with
Sanjay, I'm sorry, I'm just cutting you in between. But like audit will be probably that will be for current financial year or the past financial year.
no, it goes
The
back.
remaining queries will be like that will be the audit query from the scrutiny perspective for the past like the 2 years down the line or the 3 or 4 years, in the past. That will be kind of the scrutiny, right?
Yes,
In
I
terms
mean
of that
that
any
happens.
particular query comes to you. Yeah.
That happens. I mean, we go back 3 4 years. Sales tax for even 2018, 2019.
Mhm.
Audit requests can come back. So I'm saying even if I archive and I want to access last year's data for whatever reason, then
Mhm.
you know isn't that a challenge based on how you're explaining this archival work? Or maybe I'm not asking the right question.
No, no. So, okay, I got your point, and thanks for that clarifying that particular doubts that I had. So I think so that UI forms are available, like either particular that inquiry for the selected either even it is a warranty claim or for that any audit question from that particular the orders or the GL the perspective you can go and you can get that particular the data show it to the auditors in FNO itself using the history forms, or that if you need any particular the reports format, in that case you can always use the managed data lake and you can build your own reports in your own the format the way you want to present to the auditors.
Okay,
So that data
gotcha.
is
May-
Yeah,
available. So only the representation is matter, right? That how you want to represent.
correct,
Maybe
correct.
I'll
So
just
that's
add what Sanju's mentioned. If I just go
Mm-hmm,
back to the previous version of Dynamics, which is AX 2012, there was a tool
mm-hmm,
called IDMF, right? Intelligent Data Management Framework. So I
mm-hmm,
worked along with Bharat on that tool very extensively, one of our customer in Germany. And
mm-hmm,
what we saw that tool is to allow the kind of a question that Sanju just now asked, where it creates it replicates the entire data into another database of FNO, and then
mm-hmm,
sorry AX 2012. my bad. And then you can have a client which is connected to that database, so that there would be a separate instance if anyone wants to
Yeah.
see and navigate into the application with the step-by-step prompts that they are using in day-to-day basis, rather than navigate into inquiry.
Mhm. Yeah, but then over there also that in this the IBM like there was the standard set of the UIs those were available, right? And those are
That's
the
correct.
reports were available, and the business users used to use those reports for any particular day-to-day activities. So now that these data are available in the managed data lake, and you guys like customers and the partner can build the reports as per their need. That is what I'm trying to say.
No, I completely align with you. In fact, it was a different technology stacks. We should not compare apple to apple. But I just wanted to
Yeah.
give that perspective, that sort of feature what Sanjeev was trying to understand. It was there in AX 2012 with the help of IDMF.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay, Mehul, you want to go?
Okay. And
Yep.
sorry, the other question was, when is this going to be available for general use for everybody?
That is still that we are evaluating, like in terms of the feedback from the customers that we are testing right now, and the GA date probably it could be either in the June, or like either could be the 10 or 40 or the 41, but it will be depends on the confirmation from the engineering team.
Okay, got it. And sorry, I don't want to take time, but can we test it? Like, can I test it, or is it
Of course,
limited to?
it is a public preview. Yes,
Yes,
it is a
Perfect.
yeah, it's
public
in public
preview.
preview. So if you
Yeah.
update your environments, test environments to 10.0.39,
I
you should
just
be able to test
I
it.
just put the messages. I just put the all the documents reference that I mentioned in the chat. So the second is
Perfect.
the setup. So you just follow those steps, and you can reach out to me either on to the Yammer, and then you can just post the questions if you face any particular issue. Definitely, we ask to raise a support case, but if you face any particular challenge, okay, yeah. And another thing, important point that I missed in the conversation, we are in the public preview with limit of 100 million records. But if you have a customer who are interested to test in a range of 100 to 500 million, we are going to increase that limit soon. But by that time, that limit has been increased. And if you want to test that, please reach out to me. I will help you coordinating the engineering team, and I will enable it for you.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all. I appreciate it.
No problem. Mehul?
Yeah, sure, Purva. So I have two questions. First is related to the cost understanding. As the data stays in cloud, so do we have any
Mhm.
cost comparison upfront available, like the cost of data stored in FNO versus history versus the purged one? That is the first
Y-
question.
y- So I think that the pricing is already been published recently, but that particular price, so like FNO, the price for like the cost of the data for the FNO database or for the Dataverse, it is similar. And but the whatever the price it has been published, like the $40 per GB, it is just ticket price, right?
Correct. Yeah.
What
So
does that mean is it depends on that what is your data growth, volume, and based on that that what will be your negotiation with that account team, that will determine that your the final price that you will pay for your the storage cost.
okay. So what I understand is it's like same, correct? Customer is not getting cost benefit from this. Is this correct
No, so
conclusion?
cost of your SQL database and Dataverse, it is same,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
But
Yeah. So
the
like
what
like
price that
SQL.
is mentioned. Mhm.
No, no, sorry. When
Yeah.
you say the SQL means like FNO database, correct?
Yes.
Versus the Dataverse data. So like yeah,
Dataverse
that's a
storage.
40. Yeah, so that's you correctly mentioned that $40 per GB, and like many of US customers, and now they are getting the warnings or like the
Yeah.
emails from Microsoft, like you purchase it. So now we have the few customers like have a huge database, and they are like like looking for this kind of option, and where they are looking for a like cheaper storage which is available, maybe what option you mentioned is a fabric, so that can we maybe explore, and when that data storage is like cheaper, so I think with this we will not be able to move data to data storage. It's just up to Dataverse, correct?
Yeah, as a result of this particular archival, yes, it will, you will able to take it to the managed data lake.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So that was the first question. Second is around like when
I
we
guess,
move data to
I
the.
guess, Mehul,
Yes, sir.
sorry to know, Mehul, I think it's a very good
No, sir.
question. So, and Purvesh, this applies to us actually. So,
Mm-hmm.
anything that is archived using this method, is it not going to reduce the total GB storage that FNO uses and ultimately reduce the dollar per GB that a customer pays?
No, so reduce the
Let's
storage.
say
The
if I'm
example
at
that I have, yeah.
if I'm
So
at 800
example that I
GB.
have given, yeah. So example that I have given of
Hmm.
the 100 GB of my the database storage of my inventrans, so that if it is 100 GB of my inventrans, when I will perform the archival, the 20 GB will be my data and 80 GB will be my index, right? So when I will perform the archival of the 100 GB, I will delete those 100 GB from my inventrans. So that way that the inventrans will get reduced by the 100 GB. It will get copy into the history table that will add up the 20 GB, so that your direct benefit is 80 GB, isn't it? On top of that,
Uh,
if you don't want the data
okay,
in
sir.
your history table, once that it has been archived, you can purge them, so that even that particular 20 GB will also go away from your storage.
So ultimately, my
Okay.
data size is reducing, and
Yeah,
I will pay
ultimately
Of
your
more.
course,
data
as a
size is
result of, yes,
reducing. Yes.
yeah,
Okay, that is what I think Mayol is also trying to understand: is if I do this, what is my
Yes, sir,
customer?
correct.
Is it okay?
yeah. So
And
like
eventually you can see that in your Power Platform Admin Center, because now everything is moving to Power Platform Admin Center. So yeah, there you see a capacity by apps, right? For example, finance and
correct.
operation apps or Power Platform
Yes.
apps or Dataverse, right? So once your capacity, once you use this feature and say, for example, you archived millions of records, after that you should be able to see significant difference in your Power Platform Admin Center, where it will show, okay, finance and operation apps are now earlier in now it is 50 GB available.
It has
Now
been
maybe it's
reduced.
55
Yeah, yeah,
gigabytes available, right? Something like that.
Correct.
yeah.
And my basic fundamental understanding is that the reason why Microsoft is even coming up with this archival is so that customers can manage their data growth and ultimately reduce the storage usage and incur less per GB dollar bills.
Yeah, so that was the content of my third slide, right?
Correct.
Like you just,
Gotcha.
yeah, you restrict your the volume of your live tables. That way you can improve the performance of your system and reduce your database storage.
Perfect.
And
And I
so
apologize. I didn't mean.
archival is no problem, but this archival is the one of the tooling, because of now that we are enforcing that the storage overage, right? So
Mhm.
are you guys aware of UDE, Unified Dev Experience, as well as the advanced copy? Is using that the advanced copy, like you don't need to bring your entire production copy into your sandbox instance, right? You just, if you want to test it, like it depends on the what purpose that you want to use. If you want to use only for your testing purpose, with your latest restoring the latest configuration, use advanced copy. What you will, what the advanced copy will do, it will bring only your master tables from your production database to the your sandbox environment. No transaction tables at all. Still that we got the really good feedbacks from the some of the our customers that we are testing right now. And like they are asking, like, I want to bring some of the tables, so give us some sort of relaxation in terms of the selection of the tables, so that we are engineering team is working on that right now. But at this moment, if you want, we strongly recommend that just try to use that advanced copy in the some features. Like it is going to help not onto your production environment, but many customers, or like probably that you guys will be also one of them, is when you do the copy of your production database to that in your sandbox, you bring everything. probably you may not need everything on your sandbox, right? So, and
Correct.
now till the time that you didn't notice it because of there was no charge, but now it is like that, it it it's like that, जितना तुमको गुड़ चाहिए उतना तुमको मीठा मीठा चाहिए उतना शक्कर डालना पड़ेगा, so that you have to pay for
Yeah.
it. It's as simple as it is,
Yeah. Yeah, and there is another requirement also coming up when we restore DB from production to sandbox. Like due to the policies of a data, they want to just restore limited data and share it to developer team. So I think over there also we can
Yeah.
use that table selection option if that is available.
Yeah.
So first one you mentioned is advanced copy. Is it available in a public preview or
It is
GA?
it is
Sorry,
in
I
public preview. It is in public preview along with UDE. When you use the UDE, Unified Dev Experience, you can use
Okay.
advanced copy.
So that's like from the LCS it might be correct, that option is available.
No, it's from
to
Power
you.
Platform Admin Center.
It is a part of
Okay,
our
Power
platform.
Platform.
It
Okay.
is in
Okay.
PPAC, yeah.
Good
Yeah.
to know.
There are
Nice.
Purvesh, you
documentations
just
are available around that one as well.
No, yeah, I noted.
Purvesh,
So yeah, it will
in the
just
discussion, you
research.
just mentioned one point for this data lake. We have to enable some of the feature in the LCS. So going forward, how that synergy will work with the Power Platform Admin Center for this data lake?
No. So okay, this for this particular the archive perspective,
Archive
you
perspective.
don't need to you don't need to do anywhere. You don't need to go anywhere else. When
Okay.
as a if you go through the documentation, very first step of the install archive service, it is a 365 apps in the Power Platform Admin Center.
Okay, understood.
When we install that app, automatically this add-in will get installed into the LCS. That is the archive service.
Okay, so this is not part of LCS, it's part of
Understood.
Power
It
Platform
is a
Admin
part of
Center.
Power
part of LCS, but it get installed through installation of archive service
Power
from
Platform.
Power Platform Admin Center.
Power.
Okay.
Okay. So maybe in tomorrow's world of unified experience, we will get ability to enable it from
We are
directly
moving.
Power Platform.
We are even eventually we are moving everything onto the Power Platform Admin Center.
Understood. Mehul, sorry I cut you short. You wanted to
Good,
ask
good.
some question, right?
Yeah. Second question was around the like dual write. So when we just like move the data to history, then the dual write functionality will be available on those table, or and the second is like when we move to the like this purge. Sorry, not purge, but yeah, that's archive. Over there also the dual write will be available or no? Because we have the integration and the table which is heavy on this FNO, we are doing sync to the CE. So in CE we need it, but here we can still FNO, we can still archive because those data are related to pricing, and those pricing data that CE
That's a
or
very good
CRM
question,
team
actually,
needs it.
how that
So
works.
It's a great question. So answer to that your
it's
question is we have a archive service solution available at FNO site, at CE site, both the sites, right? And another important factor, the archive, that the delete action that will be performed on the live table, that will run through SQL, directly on the SQL. So how the dual write is being triggered? Dual write will only triggered if the delete action has been performed through X++ code, right? From the FNO perspective, that will trigger that the event for the dual write. So since it has been triggered through the SQL, no impact on the dual write. So if you want to, you have a, and that is what the flexibility you have. Like you can run archival in FNO separately and C separately. The reason behind is that FNO data go at the separate place, C data go at the separate place. Of course, into the managed data lake, but again, it's a separate places, separate file structure because of it's a data store for the two different apps. So you should perform the archival separately for both the systems. So
But the archival parameter should be
okay.
the same, right?
it depends on that
Say
that
for
how do you
example, if
archive.
I say for example, I archived sales orders for last 2 years, but I did not archive those orders. However, we are migrating, right? For example, from C to FNO, the orders are
Logically
created.
you should, yes.
Logically, you should,
Yes.
but if I did not do that, then the order resides in C and order does not reside in FNO. In that scenario, how dual write will react?
It is an invoiced order, so there is no chance to make any kind of the changes in terms of update of the order, right? Because it is invoiced. So if it is an invoice, then anyway, it is just a read-only data. Even that if you delete it from C, and what will happen into the FNO, I will not able to make any change in that particular invoice order, right?
Yeah.
Until and unless I go and create a new line or something that will make that my order enable only for the new line that going to make. But
So is there any
anyway,
plan to put any restrictions on these kind of scenarios where, on invoice orders, of course, if somebody adds a line, then definitely that order does not exist in FNO, right? So I think there has to be some enforcement to make sure that in dual write enabled scenarios, the parameter for archival between C and FNO should always be the same, or maybe guidelines or something like that, right?
that's the great point. Yes, I can take that particular note in terms of that particular, enforcing that validation in terms of. But normally, archive is meant for normally the historical data.
Right.
Right, we do not, and normally as a end user, or that in my day-to-day business activity, we are always going to work on my current fiscal year, not for the 3 years old order or the 4 years. But I think
Yeah,
that is
I
also a
agree.
great point
Mhm.
from maintaining the in terms of the consistency between the two applications. Yes, I agree.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I think we are already already ran 30
Way
minutes
over.
as we planned,
Yeah.
right? Overrun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think let's take a pause now. Thank you very much, Purvesh, for your time. I know it's too
No
late
problem.
at your place, but once again, thank you
But
for
I
your time and
enjoyed. Yes,
efforts.
yeah, it was a great conversation. So and
Yeah, yeah, and
it was like
thank you
a
to our
good time to meet with you guys.
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you,
we'll meet.
Purvesh,
We'll
for
plan
your
something
valuable time.
soon,
Yeah.
Purvesh.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Purvesh.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.